11. May I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Neely,
Present.
Commissioner Nacita,
Here.
Commissioner Roth,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Yates,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw, Commissioner Mum,
Here.
Commissioner Edgar,
Here.
and Chair Walters.
Here. Okay, do we have any citizen comments this evening? No citizen comments. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, adoption of the agenda. Any concerns or objections? Okay, we'll move on to item 4, general business. 4A, the Cove Development Tree Preservation and Grading Plan Update.
All right, thank you. Evening, Commissioners. So at the dais tonight, we received some additional information within the last 24 hours. As you may recall, at our October 19th Urban Renewal Commission meeting, we presented revised grading and tree preservation plans for the Cove project. At that meeting, there was a request to have a site visit on that Saturday. That site visit was held, and the Cove developers went back and revised the tree preservation and grading plans, and those are what you have in front of you tonight. The first thing is a PowerPoint, part of a PowerPoint presentation on tree preservation that you're going to see is the first thing. The second thing, the second exhibit is an email from Mr. Frazier dated November 2nd, 2011 with the letter from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife that was forwarded to all the commissioners this morning. So I just went ahead and printed it out so you'd have a hard copy of that. The third is a grading plan dated 9/16/11. So that was the plan that you reviewed at your last Urban Renewal Commission meeting. The next plan is the revised grading plan. It's dated 10/31/11. So this is the revised grading plan, and then behind that will be the revised tree removal plan dated 10/31/11 as well. At this point, I think Ed and Randy have a presentation that they'd like to give. I think once we've had that presentation, we can circle back and kind of talk about how we'd like to move forward from there.
What time do you usually eat dinner here? Maybe we should come a little early. And have dinner. Well, it's good to be back again. We spent quite a bit of time out in the field with only, I think, 3 of the commissioners. And per that time with our engineers, the day before we had been out with the engineers and gone through the plan in total. And they came up with some of the ideas, and I think we kind of formulated those on the Saturday with all the commissioners. So it's taken a week to get that back in line. And what we've got, we'll go through our presentation here. We had 38 trees that we were saving on the original plan. With the revision, we're up to 80, almost a little over double the amount of trees. This is what we showed you the last time we were here. The quadrant up here in the right corner.
And Ed, sorry if I could jump in. This is the hard copy of the presentation that you have as well. You do have the paper copy if you need to flip back and forth.
This area here is where we were out there, and the path, as you recall, comes right across here and starts here. We're moving it back behind here. So these trees that were here were not all being saved, and part of the issue is there a way that we can save the other trees that are here? So we did another grading plan. These mounds that are protecting these trees, we've tried to get rid of those and take and just swale out in between the major clumps of trees. So that gets us to the next revision here. We were able to save considerably more trees in this area by saying, all right, instead of going across all the way and just saving a few by protecting with a little circle, we eliminated 4 trees here and came down and cut this area, and that area is a borrow area, if you will, that'll be brought back up to the top. So we lost 4 trees, but we in fact gained 23 trees. So it's in this area, and this area here. There are 6 trees in this clump, so you couldn't really show them. So it's a total of 44 trees that we're able to save in this area. Some of the things that does, we're starting out at a native area here and we're grading down. So this creates a slope area here and a slope area here, which I think staff has an issue with, and over here. So it accommodates one thing, but it creates a little steeper grade in other areas. And I think that's one of the things that we can work out if staff needs to review that and needs to come back in here and we can do some modification to this. This basically costs us 15,000 cubic yards of dirt. Whenever we do a project of this nature, we usually put a reserve in because things change and things happen. We had 25,000 yards that we had in our back pocket. We used 15,000 yards here. I don't know if you know what that means, but I'll show you here in a minute. 15,000 yards is 750 truckloads at like 20 cubic yards a truck. So it's a lot of dirt that we lost in doing this. It was something that we held there for contingencies. We burned up, a good portion of what we had in our contingency, but we're able to accommodate this programming. Going to the next one, this is what we had shown you before. And then when you see this, these trees here were already counted on the one before. So this is our last time that we're here. And once again, this is kind of an extraordinary look. And I'm actually pleased that we all got together and did this, because you end up having a bowl that you create and then you come back down to preserve that. So by taking in, modifying that, we had to cut here, go up, and now we've kept this to native, so we're able to save these trees in this area. And we cut back down and we lost 3 trees here, but we picked up 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 trees in this area. So our overall, this number doesn't totally add, and this is me counting. Our engineers told us that we had 80. I came up with 73, just counting the circles. So there's a little bit of discrepancy between myself and the engineers, but we were able to save a considerable number of trees. The green area is the grading and how we've had to cut that. This is the tree, and I think if you don't have this, we can get you a copy of this, the tree removal plan. And I'm going to kind of click through this real quickly, and there's circle there. Each of those major areas, we can actually do a combination program.
This is the 1031? This is the latest?
This is the latest, yes.
So this would be the tree removal plan dated 1031 on your glass.
Yes. And when you take this number one on our plan is right here, so you get the general area. And that's where we're able to save the additional trees. Then number 2 is moving right to this area here. So as you're going down the path, we're moving along. This area is where the ramp is. And the trees that are at the top there, even though we'll have a little bit of steep grade on the side here to come up and protect these trees, we're able to save the evergreens that are at the top of the ramp, which is really a nice programming. I'm very pleased with it. So that's this area. I think it's right there. My glasses aren't that powerful. Going to the next one, they kind of work their way down. I think the main thing is that this is a very exceptional opportunity to save those trees. The combined effort means that we're moving a lot of different dirt. We're actually creating some different grades, and we think that it works. If there is a conflict, and I understand there is a conflict with the staff, I think there's some steep grades. I'd like to be able to work that out with staff and get your recommendation to move forward. It is a very unique process that we're going through, and even though we're creating a better plan here, time is of the essence, and we're just going back and forth here. We'd really like to get your support on moving the project forward. This is what I put in there. You see a truck of that size. It's a gigantic truck. It's 750 truckloads of that size of a truck. It's a lot of dirt. So what we're actually requesting this evening, and I'll make this quick and short here, to give the staff the right to move forward with the DDP. And we'd like to also have you recommend that staff move the CRA and the DDA and the CRA forward, which is the Disposition and Development Agreement and the, what is that? Conditional Reinstatement Agreement. That the timing for that, and this is the problem that I have in our process right now is that everything is conditioned on getting the next thing accomplished. We have partners that want to come to the table. They're saying, you don't even have a deal. We don't have a deal. We need to move that part of it forward. And that's why I'd like to get your recommendation to move that forward if it's your desire. If not, we've got to do something else here because it's timing is just, we're really running out of time. We're getting questions as do we have the capacity to even move this project forward. It's been a very extended process. And there's no question that you have to make the compromises and do the things that we're doing, and we're more than happy to do that. But I think we're at a point where we really need to move the project forward. So we'd really like to have you work with us, and we can work with the staff. If there's an issue as to grading or a little bit of steepness here or there, we'll take and do it our best job to maintain the greatest number of trees. If there's a significant variance from where we are right now, then we'll come back and say, here's our problem and here's what we have to do. But we don't want to stop this process. We would like to get your support this evening and basically move the project forward. In the DDA and the CRA, we are asking for the 9-month extension. We've reviewed this a couple of times with you. What we're asking for in there is a change of phasing where we're going from the 210 apartments to the 204 condos. We've revised the grading plan so that it works with the current concept. We need to have the city move forward with the Tri-Cities to secure the lease. We'll do a joint parking agreement on that parking area, which is right behind, if you recall where it is, it's right here. This is the parking area. I think in this area. Someplace there, yeah, right here. So that needs to be moved forward. The public investment budget, now that we've modified the grading, we have to go back out and rebid that. This is not going to be a big change to the contractors. It's 15,000 yards. That's not a significant number when you consider 200,000 yards. So that won't really affect our budgeting that much. And then the operating agreement with our new partners, that has to be reviewed by JANIC as it was the first time. The construction contract, that's something that we will get to JANIC also. We will be requesting an exemption from the public bidding process only for the general contractor. That would mean our partners. They want to be the general contractor not only for the horizontal but for the vertical. And if you recall, we did an exemption when we had Sladen in the project. And they are bringing a lot of capital to the table. They want to do the horizontal and do the vertical. And one of the main reasons for that is that they want to know that what's underground is where it should be and that they are the person that has actually controlled that. So it's a big item for them. They would like to see that. However, when we did it the first time, we said no matter, given the fact that we have an exemption, everything will in fact be totally publicly bid. So it's just the general contractor. So that's one thing which we haven't talked about except for when we first started the project. The public access, that's a given. We'll just work that out with the city. And I think the main thing there that we've done when we've done these kind of projects is that we put certain restrictions on, like the Esplanade. We say after 10 o'clock, there's no, bicycles, there's no people running up and down. It's just a sign that goes out there. And that's something we'd work out with the city. And then
You're talking about during the construction period.
Construction period and afterwards. Yeah, afterwards. Very, good signage that says, all right, this is a restricted area at after 10 o'clock. If somebody wants to walk down it, that's fine. But for kids and people running up and down and making noises because of the residents there. And then obviously we have to pull a permit and we have to record a construction loan. All those things are right now programmed to hit in April. We're asking for 9 months. That's 2 months later. But we're trying to actually hit it in April. That would be with the infrastructure. And the way that, if you recall the schedule from before, we would start the infrastructure and probably within 2 to 3 months we could start going vertical. And we've talked to the building department here if we could pull foundation permits early. And we've done this in several communities. you don't put something in the ground that's going to be flammable if you don't have all your utilities in, but you can actually start work on the concrete portion. So that's something that we would like to do. That wouldn't come back to you, it would be with the staff, which would be part of our recording of the construction loan. So our main concern is to move the project forward as we've designed it. If we need to move some additional dirt to accommodate staff, we'll do that, but we'd like you to give them the authority to do that with us, as long as we're close to what we have right now. So that's kind of the summary of what we have for this evening.
Are there any questions for Ed or Randy or myself before we kind of move on to how to move next steps?
I do have a question. Excuse me. This is a question about, can I even ask this question? I have an additional concern about the floor plan of the condominiums. And I know we've seen some very nice examples of what you've built in other places. But I'm very concerned that if we're building these as condos to be used as apartments, that we're just going to get plain old apartments like we see everywhere. I would really like to be assured that we're going to see something there that I wouldn't mind moving into in a couple of years. You know, floor-to-ceiling windows, big rooms. I don't want to move into a apartment.
No, I understand that, and we do have a agreement with the sign, if you'd like to sign it, to buy the first unit. We have done a lot of condos, very high-end, and we've done a lot of apartments, probably 10,000 apartment units over the years. And when you design a condo unit, you really design it, especially when you're doing on the water. And we've done 8 waterfront projects, all of them very nice. Some of them are apartments. You try to have the footprint be from 26 feet up to 42 feet wide. And what you get in doing that, you get the living space, you get the kitchen, you get a master bedroom. We've designed the units to do that. Not all of them do that, but part of them do that, because you can't make every unit that big and still have it, appraised and be able to sell it. These are not going to be high-end condominium units. They're not going to be high-end in terms of the expense when we convert them. We will take and do interior finishes, will be apartment finishes, which means the countertops, the cabinets, and the flooring. When we've done the conversions, those are the things which we go in, we do 2 or 3 units, we totally convert that out. We put in granite, we change the cabinets, and we'll change the flooring. People can either buy it that way and convert it later, or they can give us the right to go ahead and do it. We bring one guy in, all he does, he coordinates with every buyer, and go through and say, what is it that you would like to see in here to modify it? We've even knocked out walls so that where you have a 2-bedroom unit, you'll knock out a wall which goes into the living area, and that becomes a space that's like an office or whatever. So the units that we've designed will be very good in terms of the condo market. When we went back to the appraisers when we started the redesign, we said, well, what will work in the current market when it turns around? And the numbers that were there were between 900 square feet up to like 1,300. So what we programmed in is 995 square feet as an average. They go down to 725 up to 1,350. Those 1,350 are the very end units. They're really super nice units. As you come into the interior, we've lined it up so some of them have a bedroom that's facing out to the water, but all of them have the living space and the kitchen facing out. So they're units which will be very marketable in a condo environment, but they're not so overbuilt and so big that we can't, in fact, put them into a rental program. So it's a very unique little balance that you have to do when you're programming that kind of a package. A lot of times what happened, I think somebody said here, you never, I think it was Janik that said it, you don't take and build condos and then lease them. You usually you've made an error, you built condos, now you have to lease them. That's not the intent here, and it's not the case. We've designed them so they'll work in this market. And one of the biggest things that we did to do that was take out the subterranean parking. That's $25,000 per space. That saved us $8 million. So we're able to take and do these units. You don't find an apartment that has an elevator. You don't have many apartments that have full security. This will have full security, so when you get out of your car and go into the unit, that'll be a lock. You get into the elevator, you go up to your floor. It's all single loaded, meaning you're not going down through a corridor where you have people on each side. It's a very unique product. We're very pleased with it, and we spend a lot of time. And $339,000 worth of architectural fees. So,
Do you have floor plans that we can look at?
oh yes,
Because I don't believe I've seen anything like that.
yeah. I think we presented them at one time, but we can certainly get you a set of them.
Mr. Edgar?
First, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for the Saturday walkthrough. I thought you were not only gracious, but it was very productive. It was a kind of a good interchange that we had. You probably have you seen the letter from Oregon Department of Fish and Game?
Yes.
Yes. I echo what our city manager wrote. I was very pleased with what was written and the dialogue associated with how we could be more responsible. And part of that statement is in there is how we embrace it and is trying to come back and making sure that as you move ahead, as we move ahead, that what was written is part of exactly the part of the conversation that's always been a very major concern of mine, is that we're as responsible as we can possibly be. And I'm hopeful that is there anything that you see or that was part of that letter that changes what we have in front of us today?
I'll let Randall respond to that. Randy actually invited them to come to the table so that we would get their input, and has, in fact, coordinated with them consistently. For my point, I don't see anything in there that is something we can't accomplish, and I think that's part of the process. When you go through with people that have that background, they're much more technically capable than we are. We like to bring them to the table to assist us, and we don't usually find that it's an obstructionist program. They want to help, and they want to, in fact, do it. We're the same way, and I think Randy might have some comments on it.
Well, it's kind of the old paradigm versus the new paradigm. And the old way of doing things was to draw a line in the sand and choose sides. And the new way is to draw a circle in the sand and invite people to come in. And basically, that's what we try to do with environmental folks and what we did with Liz from Oregon Fish and Wildlife. And we don't see anything that she's identified in there that would be a concern. One thing, and this would be something that's a city decision, the recommendation was that there not be any public access to the peninsula because it's a significant habitat and it's best left alone if you're thinking about what's best for the critters that are out there. One exception to that we could possibly do would be to say it's closed off to the public except for guided tours. So if there's a naturalist who wants to take some Boy Scouts or school kids or whatever out there and learn about the environment, that maybe is okay to be an acceptable use of that natural area. But that again would be up to the city. As far as a lot of the recommendations, we don't see any problem with them. The White Oak Savanna sounds like a really neat thing. What was fun about Liz was she's so committed, and she's starting to talk about the life cycle of little bugs, and then how that relates in the food chain, and how it's all tied together. Well, of course, we know that, but it's nice to hear. There really wasn't anything that she identified that we would see as a deal breaker. And she was gracious enough to meet with us and our engineers and go over her preliminary report and just make sure that there wasn't anything that was a misunderstanding that would be a major problem.
Has she seen this last, this 1031 document?
I haven't talked to her for a couple days, and that was just shipped out to her by the engineers a couple days ago. So I don't know if she's had a chance to look at it and study it or not.
I would sure like to hear or get comment from her on it. Also, one of the other issues is Slayton and your connection with Slayton. My understanding is that, and I I've just got it secondhand, but that Slayton is in bankruptcy, or there is some, or a divorce or something like that. There's some, and I was trying to sort it out because I wanted to make sure that your ability to eliminate any contingency associated with what they own. If I understand correctly, the title to the property behind the Oregon City Shopping Center is currently in their name?
Yes, it is. It's. I can give the background. Slayton, I've heard nothing that would even suggest that. They are a very substantial company doing very large public projects. It's made up of two principals. One is Todd Woodley, and the other one is Greg Houston. They own the company. That company is a substantial company. When they came into the project originally, it was Slayton. Then Todd Woodley wanted to come in as an individual, so he set up a separate entity, which is called WPI, Woodley Properties, Inc. And he took over the capitalization as we move forward, independent of Slayton. The property was closed in Slayton's name. We have, part of our petitioning with Todd Woodley was that we have a right to an option to pick up that property. We're proceeding with that with our new partners. So the intent is that property will come from Slayton into CC LLC, potentially. We have to finalize that. But even if we didn't finalize that, it has a full design for apartments. It has a full package that's ready to go. It is a very marketable package. So we like to control it as the master planner. We don't like somebody to come in and say, well, we want to design something that isn't compatible with us, the project. We would make that commitment that we're going to move forward, and that's our intent at this point. There is nothing. Todd Woodley personally got a divorce. That was part of his issue for not wanting to continue, but that's not something which has affected us. It was just part of his decision. It was an independent decision. Their corporate entity is a very strong entity, and we actually very much enjoyed working with them.
So at this point, you see no problem exercising an option that is, should that become something that you want to do to pull it all under one umbrella, your umbrella, or this umbrella that gets set up so that there are no contingencies associated with them not being part of this deal again.
That's our primary objective, exactly. And if that didn't happen, we always like to look at the downside risk. The property is zone MUD. It has the ability to either go with the office program, which we had designed with Kaiser. It has the ability to go with the apartments. When you go through as a developer and you look at a project, you say, my gosh, it takes you at least a year to 18 months to get an approval. That project is approved for 210 apartments. Right now, the highest profile product there is in the marketplace is apartments. Very bankable, very financeable, everything. My son is an engineer, has his own company up in Seattle. He talked to me yesterday. He said, you can't believe how everything is cranking up in this area. He says, primarily large apartment projects, and now they're starting to do plats for single-family houses because it takes 18 to 24 months to get those designed and get them where they're ready to go. People are starting to come back to the table and move everything forward. So we don't feel like there will be a problem to make that commitment. That's what we want to do. And when you do a project of this size, you want something out in front of you to keep going, to keep building. And it's not like we're rolling things over and selling them. We're going to keep them. And to have 400 units is a lot better than just having 200 units. And then ultimately, when we convert the condos to sale units, then we'll have a rental program and we'll have a sale program. So it's very positive for us.
A final issue I still have concern on is on the dredging and the possibility that how do we maintain a channel? Is it really realistic to proceed ahead with the idea that it's a marina with power boats when we can't really figure out how to create a navigable channel through the mouth of the cove and out the Clackamas River to the Willamette River?
The marina has always been the very last phase of the programming. It's not something that people absolutely have. It's not a profit center to us. It's more of an amenity to say, all right, I can walk out and jump on my boat and go up the river. So it isn't a mandatory thing, and it doesn't change the economics of our deal if we had it or we didn't have it. So we would like to have it, and we would like to move that forward. Our concern isn't so much about having the marina, it's to have the real water quality. And that's one of the main reasons we would like to see that. We've heard from, I think it was Jerry Herman that told us that water actually changes like every 7 days. That's pretty nice to have that quality of a water programming, and that's our main objective, not so much to have the boating as it is to have the quality of the water. So we're pushing on that, and I think we told you we've met with the county. We will continue those efforts. We've found a couple other potential resources. One of the other potentials, if we can grind down our contractors on the infrastructure costs, there might be a way to say, all right, we've got enough money within the infrastructure cost to do the first round, and then start setting the dollars aside to keep it open. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nocita.
I'd also like to thank Randy and Ed for taking a walk with us recently and hanging in there and exploring alternatives to this previous planning. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. First, this chart about tree preservation lists the number of trees being preserved. What's the total of trees being removed under the prior plan and under the current plan?
The engineers were going to get back to us with a count. The last count that I had for that area where the condominiums will be, that portion of the site, was it'd be about 70 trees that would come out.
The length of the east bank? Under the new one or under the old one?
That was under the old one.
Okay. Whoops. And how about under the new one? Or that's what you're waiting for the count on?
we have the plan. Well, I don't know as if we haven't counted them, but I'm sure the engineers have got them counted. They can get back to you with that number.
Also, the other question I have is on, and this might transition my questioning from you guys to Tony. How is public access to the water handled under this new plan?
Well, the intent is to have, originally we had 2 points that we were going to create public access. Well, it looks like I've only got one pointer. It's that, I'm going to go pull that up and bring it over, Randy. Maybe step back so the audience can see it too there. We have, originally we planned a ADA type access here that would come down. With the regrading, I find that's going to be a little bit difficult to do. When we did the regrading here, this path that comes down here now comes a little bit closer, so we'll have access right here, and the intent was to have access here. That's a little questionable right now, so we'd have one primary access where you can come in and go down the whole area. If the marina goes in there, then we would put a standard marina like they have done downtown. That wouldn't be ADA, but it would have a ramp. And this area down here, which would be for kayaking, canoeing, would have the ADA approach. So there's 2 points of access here.
So the rest of the length of the east bank you'd have the promenade looking over the water, but you really wouldn't have any like footpath or anything downstream.
One of the things that we've found in doing these kind of projects is that you really want to restrict the amount of access points. On the South Shore project where we had the dunes, when anybody bought a unit, these were condominiums that went from 350 to $1,200,000. We had a major pathway and access, but we put like 3 access points. And then we put signs up when anybody breached that area and started doing their own little path from their condo building. We went up and we put a sign that said, "Do not access. This is a fragile area. We don't want you accessing this. Be a steward of what we've got. Don't do that." We gave them books on stewardship. You really have to bring them in, and not so much saying, "We absolutely don't want you to do it, but here's what you get if you don't do it." So that's kind of the approach. And we don't want to have a bunch of access points or sliding down the hill and going down to the water area. We want to keep that tract C, which is that whole waterfront area, as a pristine, nice area with real access points that are usable.
Okay, so let's take a hypothetical. Let's say someone had a little kayak they wanted to launch, and right now they're coming in and parking at the Main Street entrance into the Clackamas River Trail, and maybe walking down to that little jutting inlet on the south side there. Where would they launch their little kayak under the new plan?
Well, the intent is right here. We have a circular turnaround. We thought we would build a rack system here where people will actually lock up a canoe or a kayak if they wanted to do that. Then ultimately the water sports center will have racks down there where people could actually leave them, but they could park their car here, offload, and there's 28 spaces of parking right in this area, so they could park their car, take them. Usually, when I've had those kind of boats and what have you, I've got a little wheel thing that I pull it along on, so you don't just take it off the top and throw it in the water. You carry it down. So they would go down this path, which is right here, to the water sports center and or to this access point and just go right into the water. So there's a very defined area. If they go up here to where you're talking about, then they'd have to, finagle some way to get down through the brush and everything here. The intent is to make a very specific point. This is where you come in. This is what you do. We've got spaces. Those are 28 public parking spaces. They're not for the condos. They're defined. So we would believe that at any point in time, maybe if you had a bunch of guys that are rallying for canoeing or kayaking, you might get more than that. But that should accommodate your typical user.
I'm sorry I can't see back here. I was just wondering if you could give us an idea about what that walk is lengthwise. Since we can't see the sign.
Is there an image that the audience can see? Because they were all behind that image.
So this is the grading plan. It doesn't show on here, but effectively it would be coming down right here, and the path is coming off of here and going right down. So it's a pretty short path. This is where they would drive in, come in here. There's parking here. There's a storage area here, and you'd come down. So I don't know what that would be. It's probably 400 feet, something like that. Not a long distance, nothing that would be overwhelming. And it'll be to an ADA standard, so it's not going to be like shooting down a straight slope.
Okay. Next question is, the way I'm looking at this still creates significant breaks in the tree line of the riparian willow and cottonwood row that exists there now. And we talked in the past, and I think about the concerns over having direct sunlight on the cove when this type of tree removal occurs. So I guess I'm wondering, is there now, or could there be a compensating planting whereby once the grading occurs along the shoreline, there is some type of planting or placement of tree trunks, etc., in the water to provide compensating shading for those trees that are removed along the tree line?
That's something we could certainly look at. I don't really have an answer without talking to the landscape people and people that know what will grow in that area. I think there's an opportunity to do it at the very bottom of the slope. The question is, will it grow there?
You were talking about dead tree trunks in the water, right? Or
Well,
were you
I
talking
mean,
living?
there are two techniques I think that could be used. One would be plantings that down near the shoreline, like willows that would grow right at the shore to provide shading. The other one would be
Emerging
clustering trunks so that the sun, would hit the trunks but still leave shadow underneath for protection.
At the end of the David Evans report, there's an analysis of the shade, and I believe one of the things it says is that the body of water is so large and the amount of shaded area so small that the shade wouldn't really have any effect on the water temperature. And I think that was their conclusion. We've heard other people say similar things and say that if the shade was on the no, never mind.
But that, even given that, that's something that we can look at. Looking at this drawing right here, I mean, we've got an area that's right along here and right along here, which has that potential for those type of trees that would work there. We can make a commitment to you here this evening that we will revisit that with the landscape people to see what would work in those areas where we're taking and pulling that grading out. So the intent is to have an exceptional project, and trees and planting make that. One of the things which we have done and we would want to have here, because of the amount of trees that are going to be saved and are going to be blocking views, quote unquote, is to have a view easement. And we've done that in other projects. And it's not to cut the trees. It's you bring a guy in that's very professional and he limbs every 10th tree or whatever. And to me, and having actually lived in some of the projects which I've built right on the Willamette, we had a view corridor easement, and we just had a guy go out and limb this tree, limb that tree, and now you've got a view that looks through the trees, which is actually better than just having a big wide open space. You get the feel of the trees, you see the birds, you things happening. So we would want to incorporate a view easement into this project, because this is city property, that track C, which is out front, as Doug has consistently required, but that's still owned by the city. But we'd like to have a view easement, and that easement could be very defined that you don't take trees out. You take and you limb trees, and that can be a very specific document also.
Next question is for staff regarding your concerns about the grading and the slope. I just want to get some background on that.
I've had the plans all of 24 hours, so I don't have a laundry list. That's the concern. Is I haven't had a chance, nor the other departments. We worked very closely with Ed and Randy in both in community development, engineering, parks, who's going to be taking over the maintenance in terms of the tree plantings, the locations, the types. So all that work we need to revisit it. So I can give you some of my off-the-cuff concerns, but I think it'd be more prudent to sit down and have a good understanding of the project and move forward from there.
Okay. Not related to the planting and grading, what is your opinion on the timeline they've set forth regarding the DDA? Because we originally had talked about December, and I'm just wanting to know your thoughts on the current proposed.
I think it's still the same position that I had when I brought this back in September, that we requested December 7th because of some timing issues that we knew we were going to run into with staff to be able to address the proposal, and that if we could get it done earlier, we would bring it back sooner. I don't think I'll have it ready for the next meeting.
Okay. I'm going to let Doug. You've removed your. What's that?
I pulled it.
Okay. Next question was I wanted to see if we have a non-quorum of our Natural Resources Committee here, and I just wondered if they had any any thoughts, or any citizens had any thoughts that they might want to share.
I'm Jerry Herman. I'm the co-chairman of the Heritage Waters Habitat Task Force, and this is Brian Boyce. He's the other co-chairman. And I just want to take you back about 6 months to basically April, when we started meeting with these folks and trying to figure out how we could work more closely together to solve some of these concerns that ultimately ODF&W has put before you, which I believe that they're going to solve. We had a tour of all their project areas and some things that we saw in Fairview, which intrigued us a lot, with other corporately developed lands from Gravel Pit, and saw how people are using those areas in the city of Fairview. And the reason I want to take you through that process is all the way along this process with them, they've been willing to listen and consider other alternatives, and we are really, really appreciative of that fact. Now, Fish and Wildlife letter you all received, I didn't receive it until last night myself, was very similar to our concerns, and yet they're willing to address many of those elements within their project scope. I know there's some concerns apparently about grading. I'll be honest with you, we'd like to be kind of involved in those things, because we spent the last 6 months on this project kind of helping move people and ourselves, our own thinking, in a direction that would allow it to move forward. We don't want to see this project held up because of us. We want this project to move forward in the partnership way we've done it. Randy talked about a paradigm. There's a new paradigm happening here, we think, where the community comes alongside, participating in the design process with qualified developers who are willing to make adjustments. The dredging issue that was alluded to by Commissioner Paul Edgar, we're actually trying to work on that in partnership with some other people to try to help that get resolved, at least for craft that could use the cove on a routine basis, maybe not deeper draft vessels. So we have a long-term interest in this. This is not our only project. We're also being asked by Gladstone to maybe assist them with Meldrum Bar, which is a major project, Meldrum Slough restoration. And one of our members asked us to get involved in West Lynn with the remediation of ponds above the falls that you might have heard about, that West would like to make into cooling areas. So our objective as a group of citizens from not just Oregon City, Gladstone, West Lynn, and Oregon City, of engineers, architects, and others without specialized degrees, myself included, is to help this process along. If there's concerns about the grading, we'd like to still be involved in those discussions with them and help resolve those. But we feel good about what's happened here. And I think it also started a year and a half ago when new leadership formed on the city here, who had an interest also in stewarding the areas around waters. I'm talking about your administrator, who's been a great part of this whole thing, looking at the retention of trees that could take place in a formal study by David Evans Associates. So that's my point. Brian?
Yeah. And there's this, in a way, this is a breath of fresh air.
Introduce yourself, please?
I couldn't quite hear you.
Introduce yourself, please.
Oh, Brian Boyce. I'm co-chair, as he mentioned, and also I'm a chair-elect at the Clackamas River Basin Council. And been, like Jerry, been involved with this on and off for the past few months. And I've looked at different aspects of it. And 40 years ago, when I first started studying landscape architecture, one of the first books I read had a section praising a certain Japanese garden where they screened off most of the view and then showed it through trees. And it's refreshing to actually see someone in the development community to actually carry that sort of idea out in its planning, where you're not just mowing everything down and stripping the lot like you often see in our area. And so, this is pretty neat, I think, as far as a developer actually offering something that goes along with environmental concerns as far as could be likely in a development like this. So I think it's a pretty positive development, and it needs to be seen in that light, and think of, what are your options elsewhere? Is there any that would be better? And I really don't think so in this case. And I did help bring Elizabeth Ruther from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife together with Randy, and they got to talking, and that's the result many of you saw just recently in the last day or so, with a real good report, and that was pretty well balanced and gave room for the development to occur, and yet added naturalistic elements that would enhance the development and the wildlife values of the area.
So in summary, we're not opposing this project, we're supporting it. And we're supporting the partnership of involving community members from several communities, not just Oregon City, that have expertise. It was alluded to that we are members of the Natural Resource Committee. We've not had a formal meeting yet of the newly reestablished Natural Resource Committee, but we are the founding members of a 21-member group, architects, planners, engineers, and citizen advocates of what's called Heritage Waters Habitat Task Force. And we really appreciate the opportunity to work with these people. So, if there's any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to express all of our appreciation to the parties that participated in that. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend, but I really value the time and effort that everyone's put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick summary statement. It is part of the process that we've done on every project, so it isn't different to us, and sometimes people come a little bit late to the table and ask for things. We usually try to work those out, and I think this has been a good program. One of the main things is for us to be able to move the project forward once again. I would like you to authorize the staff to move forward with the DDP and work with us, give them your authority to review the grading plan. Not to say that we got to come back again and review it again, but I think they're very capable people. We have a good staff of people that we can work with them. We'd like to be able to say we're moving that forward. As far as the CRA and the DDA, the main reason for looking at a time certain of like the next meeting is so that things run in parallel. We're running in series right now. We have to get one thing done and then we go to the next. We need to run in parallel, so this project is moving forward on different levels. So your direction, I'm sure that Tony's right, it's a tight time frame, but we need to turn it on. It's not even turned on yet. The people that have to do that work have not been told, let's do the work, which is basically the legal staff. We've prepared all of our stuff that we sent in to the city. It's probably been 2 or 3 weeks. We'd like to see everything move forward. So we appreciate you guys taking the time and the questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Neal.
It's a question for Mr. Conco. Your recommended action is not to approve the DDP. Your recommendation is to approve the amended tree preservation and grading plan. Is the DDP intended to be included in that recommendation?
That was the original request, and then the tree preservation and grading kind of got taken out of that, and then the site visit was requested at the last minute at the last meeting. Mm-hmm. It's up to this commission. I think we understand what your position is. If we can come up with something that's consistent with what's been shown tonight, we can move it forward. But with these changes, there are changes that are going to be needed to be made to the land use application. The planting plan is going to change. Some of the things we're going to need to work through in terms of the grading, the balance cut and fill, probably some of the stormwater that's been reviewed and approved so far. Some of that's going to have to be tweaked and changed. But those are, we can handle at the staff level if you'd like us to, realizing that this is the concept you want us to go with. We can certainly do that.
I'm going to move to move ahead on the DEP with approval of the amended tree preservation and grading plan for the code.
And I guess if I could just clarify that once staff is satisfied that we have all the information and everything's been addressed, then we will sign the application. Yes.
Just as a matter of discussion, my preference, since this is only coming up to us today, not really sure I see it. You're going to have to take time to review it. I'm not really sure that there's an issue of having a report from staff and approving it at the next meeting, and that would be my preference.
I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. I have 1 week. I have 1 week from today
1 week for...
to get you a staff report for the next meeting. I have the information available a week beforehand.
I'm not clear.
I have to have the commission report ready for the next urban renewal meeting in 7 days.
Okay, and then if otherwise, what's under the proposal right now, how would this be addressed then?
We would continue to work with them, and then once we're satisfied, Mr. Frazier would sign the application, and we would start the land use process.
If there's any major deviation from what we're presenting, then we're more than willing to come back and talk about it. And that's something that I think staff has the capacity to do. So the recommendation, if that is where we're at, is that if there's a deviation from the basic plan that we have right now, that staff will say, all right, we need to come back to you and have you look at it again. We will keep it as tight as we can to this programming, but to keep it just constantly moving forward, we'd like to have your recommendation that they in fact proceed with it. They have the ability to understand it. They know how the grading works. If there's something that is in fact out of the ordinary, then we'll come back. But let's not stop it and say, let's do it again and do it again.
I'm going to second Doug's motion.
I'm going to move for an amendment just with some specific things to address if we do that tonight, which being the issue of shading, either through new plantings or in water placement of downwoody material. Commissioner Edgar's thoughts about having Ms. Ruther comment on them. And I think that satisfies it. If we can specify that be part of the review.
I don't have any problem with those amendments.
Okay. So, is it?
I would like to understand. So I want to know.
Well, I think what's been added here is something beyond the tree preservation plan that was presented here, and I think what's being put forward are the things that have been discussed here. And I have no problem.
Correct.
I have no problem with it.
So this is not going to slow it down?
No.
I don't
Okay.
think
No, it's
so.
just clarifying
Yeah.
specific items that will be part of the review.
Then I'll accept that, so we don't slow this down.
We need a second on the amendment.
Second.
Okay.
We're incorporating it into the motion itself.
Yeah.
So we
Oh.
won't have to vote for an amendment.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Nocita.
Aye.
Commissioner Mum.
Aye.
Commissioner Roth.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw. Commissioner Yates.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar.
Yes.
Chair Walters.
Yes. Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your work.
Okay. Next, moving on to agenda item 5, consent agenda. We've got the minutes from the September 21, 2011 regular meeting, as well as the October 5th, 2011 meeting.
Move to accept.
Second.
Commissioner Nocita.
Aye.
Commissioner Mum.
Aye.
Commissioner Roth.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner Yates.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar.
Aye.
Chair Walters.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, agenda item 6, we have city manager's report. There are 2 letters from Historic Properties dated November 1st and November 2nd.
That's correct. Before we get into my reports, I do want to introduce my new assistant, Katie Riggs. That's Katie right over there. So when you guys need to visit with me or track me down or get a message to me or Any other kind of thing the city can help you with, Katie will be a big asset to you, I hope, so welcome. These two letters that I received, and I'm sorry that I've been forwarding, well, I'm not sorry, I'm glad I'm forwarding these to you, but I'm forwarding to you rather late in the day, on the day you're meeting. So it was requested or suggested that maybe the city could, the commission could talk about this evening. We don't have legal advice on that, and I would have been uncomfortable, I think, proceeding with an executive session without that advice and without this requisite 24 hours notice, which is typical unless there's a bona fide emergency. And so I would like to draw your attention to the second letter that is actually signed by Dan Fowler and Mark Foley. And the last paragraph, essentially, they're asking whether the commission, the Urban Renewal Commission, would be willing to enter into a 60 to 90-day extension for their closing date on their option agreement to allow the parties to meet and dialogue about possible alternative resolution of their differences. So I think at some point what I'd like to do is get direction from the commission about whether you want to try to negotiate with them further as towards some sort of resolution, and if so, if you want to do it before the November 8th date, which they've given us as another date that they're concerned about passing, because that's the last date that they can comply and that they would not assert that you're in breach of the contract. So if you want to give me any direction, I would like to have it. Yes.
My understanding is the issue now has to do with the city commission and not the urban renewal. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or am I missing something?
Well, the property transaction, but I read this letter is directed to Urban Renewal, whether they want to talk about this or grant it. You can't grant it's very awkward to me because the Urban Renewal Commission didn't own the property, so you're being asked to grant an extension on a contract that your name is on that isn't
That you can't
binding
perform.
because
That
you don't
you
have.
can't.
Right.
I think this is an issue.
So I will be
that's-
repeating this same, sharing this same data
Okay.
with the city commission.
I personally wouldn't feel comfortable making decisions without getting some
Absolutely.
legal
Right.
grounding on that.
And you still have there's still a few days left, and we will be getting this information to Mr. Janik as well so that he can be informed on behalf of the Urban Renewal Commission. And City Commission, I'll talk to you in a few minutes about the same thing. That's all I had on my report.
Commissioner Seated, did you have a comment? I've got you on the active.
I think the city managers addressed it. I was, like the chair, uncomfortable on making any decision in this posture we're in without the advice of legal counsel.
Thank you. Commissioner Edgar.
I personally think that this is a step forward. I would hate to think that we're churning with lawyers and spinning our wheels and getting in debt. And I would hope that taking a moment back and after we get good legal advice, but that we should be proactively trying to make sure that we have some attorneys here, but we don't need to make every attorney in the world rich off of what is happening here. And I would like to see us think smart, cool, and not preclude any positive resolution in what we're doing.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on to future agenda item, under item 7. I passed out, I sent this over to David Frazier this afternoon. He hasn't had a chance to look at it. We've had a number of comments come up about how we determine what new agenda items are going to be on, and so I put together a process for you to consider. We don't have to make a decision on it tonight, but I really want you to look at it and see if this is a workable process and if this is something that we might want to operate in the future to try to be more efficient. And I think it would be an improvement. That's the intent, is that it would improve our efficiencies.
Yeah, I think it looks, just looking at it briefly, I think it's a good recommendation.
Thank you. So we can, David, how would you like to return to this topic?
Well, while you were talking, I just was able to read the first 3 paragraphs, and it reminded me a lot of the City Commission has a set of rules and procedures that they try to go by, and it started off with 1 page, and it's 16 pages, I think, now. But I think if we...
I haven't finished yet.
I know. Well, actually, we'll be on track because you've got 2/3 of a page here, and if all 10 of them have, we'll be at 16 again. But it's really, you're trying to, I think what you're doing here is a noble effort to try to get people to realize how you work together as a group, and this looks to me just like sort of a rules of procedure on how to do that, get things on the agenda, and manage it so that everyone's, Nancy, Commissioner Walters and I did talk about this briefly yesterday on the phone, and I think you called it a parking list, so if somebody has an idea they want to discuss, but there isn't necessarily a consensus from a majority to really do something with it, it can go on a parking list so that it isn't forgotten forever. And then there's an action list that actually does have support and a consensus in the majority that we work from that. And if we ever run out of consensus items, or if the circumstances change, then things on the parking list could move onto the action list. So I thought that was a good concept. We had a good discussion about it. And so my suggestion would be for me to read the remaining paragraphs here and for all of you to do the same, look it over, and then whatever comments you have. If you'd like, we can put this on the agenda for a work session. That's really where it should be, I think. So.
Okay, and I think the idea here is that, if it doesn't work, we'll try something different, but we'd like to start off with something that we think has good promise. Okay. Any other future agenda items that Commissioner Sita?
Yes, I would like to, given part of what the discussion tonight was about on the timetable and the negotiations of the DDA, I'd like to schedule an executive session on that DDA for our next Urban Renewal Commission. There's some issues I'd like to raise, some I've already raised with this commission before. And I want to kind of proactively, if we're trying to do something by December, I agree with Tony that trying to just bring something back before December is a very quick timeline. And if we're even trying to meet December, I'd like to kind of be able to hash out stuff, frankly, in an executive session so we can provide our input on a proactive basis and not a reactive basis.
Commissioner Munn?
Do we have the DDA? I mean, I don't know. Where are we at with that? Is that ready for an exec session for the next meeting?
I have a meeting with Mr. Janik, a phone conference tomorrow. He's going to provide some preliminary responses.
So it may not be ready for the next. Might be the one after.
It's hard to say.
Yeah. Okay.
So you want us to submit questions? I've been kind of holding off to see what's coming back, and I haven't submitted anything.
Yeah.
Wait and see if the questions got answered.
I think it is kind of a chicken and egg thing, and we do need to figure out how we want to time this.
Part of my concerns relate to the memo I sent out last summer regarding the work product. And I'd like to talk about that in executive session. I think I've raised it in the past. And I'd like to do that before on a proactive basis and not on a reactive basis. It's kind of a key part of my request on this.
Commissioner Edgar.
I would like to know when our new economic development person comes on board, so that we get a little idea as to when we start pulling together somebody that's going to be focused strictly on economic development.
You probably didn't have a chance to read the press release I sent, but he starts November 17th. November 17th.
November 17th.
I would like to urge the commission not to, I don't think you were trying to do this, but I don't want you to not address Commissioner Nacita's point. So if you want to talk about that in executive session, we need that direction if it's a date certain. Otherwise, the other alternative is to wait until Mr. Janik has his comments and see. But I don't think that's what you're suggesting.
Correct.
So the commission needs to let us know what your preference is on that.
Is there a concern? I mean, can we wait until the attorney sees it and get legal advice and have them hash it out and then bring it back? Or do we have to do it before the attorney sees it?
My preference is to wait till the attorney has a chance to comment.
It seems like it would be more efficient to have all of those conversations at the same time, maybe?
Are you suggesting that the attorney review my memo as part of his review of the
I
DDA?
think that might be a good thing to do.
Sure.
Do you have any problems on my being part of that conversation, since I know the details of the memo?
No, I think you originated the memo. You have a point you want to make with the commission in executive session. I'm not entirely sure, since we've talked about this in open session, whether it'll qualify for another executive session. So we want to clear that up. But I think you're the best advocate for your own idea on this, and so I would welcome that.
Okay. Thank you.
So I guess I'm lost. What do we do? I just want to be clear.
We're not having an executive session.
Right.
So you and the attorney and
Unless, I guess,
are gonna-
unless we get the comments back. We get the comments back.
Yeah, I guess this is a little bit difficult. Whereas once again, we're is majority all right. Can I take comments from other commissioners if they want to? I mean, it puts us.
You should always be able to take comments from any commissioner.
I'd rather.
Are you still-
But if
are you
all
still
10 of you are going to
submitting
call
comments?
Steve
That's my
Janik,
question.
I would much rather just do it in an
Yes.
executive session
Yes.
here
Yeah.
than have 10 individual comments coming in from individual people.
I
from
was
the
just
attorney.
going to say,
I was actually going to propose that the four of us meet on that memo.
well, then we have to address Nancy's questions and Doug's questions, and I mean, so I guess it's probably the best way to handle it if everybody's got questions. Have the attorney here, and we'll all discuss it at the same time.
Well,
Plan for a couple hours.
Yeah. I think the concern was having an executive session before we got some response from the attorney.
Right.
And I think we agreed that wasn't going to happen. I think at a different point, if we need an executive session, we could have it.
I agree. I guess I'm happy to submit my questions. I was waiting for the attorney to come back with kind of a proposed preliminary.
Right.
And then we would be able to address it from there. But I'm prepared to submit them at any time.
We don't have a date yet, but we'll.
Push send, and you can be a part of the meeting.
What is your preference?
Tony's going to get his comments tomorrow.
Okay.
We think, but that's just the beginning. We're not sure that'll be comments on the whole DDA. So what we'd like to do is commit that we will do our level best to get the attorney here and to get an executive session for you to review his comments. I believe that your proposed idea is directly related to that same concept and some of the factors that are in the DDA. So that would qualify if the DDA negotiations do, that would, I think, necessarily. So if we can get a date, we just don't have a date for you. I wish we had a firmer date, but after we talk to the attorney tomorrow, I hope that we have that.
Okay.
I know time is of the essence for some of you, and we want to try to accommodate that.
I mean, I already know Mr. Janik's out of town during your next urban renewal meeting. So, either we're slipping to December, or we're holding a meeting at a different time.
Yeah.
Well,
Or I try and get a different attorney here.
No. I'm just saying if you guys are in a position to meet with me and Steve to talk about it, I don't have to wait till December. I'm sorry. I don't need an executive session in November. It could wait till December.
but that wouldn't be fair for Nancy's questions or Kathy's questions. Everybody should be able to ask. would be a part of it, I guess.
I'm okay with it. Personally, I don't mind waiting because it doesn't affect me, that I can tell.
Okay.
Well, I still think the question is whether the rest of the commission is comfortable having Mr. Nacita join us in that meeting with Mr. Janik, and if you are, you need to let him and I know that you're comfortable with that. If you're,
No problem.
I have no problem. I just want
Okay.
to be fully apprised of the outcome.
and I'm sure you'd be happy to resend the memo, and you may even, based on what you said to me the other day, I think there's even more clarity in your argument today than there was then, and you might want to share that with them as well.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So, are we good? All right.
Yes.
So, thank you. Meeting adjourned.